Hello, and welcome to Module 6, Task-Based Instruction, How? Focusing on Task-Based Instruction Framework. In the first lecture of this module, we are going to talk about the differences between the two sets of classroom processes, traditional form-focused instruction and task-based instruction. There are some differences between the traditional way of teaching and task-based instruction. ALICE 2002 contrasts these two sets of classroom processes. The first set corresponds to the classroom behaviors that are typical of a traditional form-focused pedagogy, where language is treated as an object and the students are required to act as learners. The second set reflects the behaviors that characterize a task-based pedagogy, where language is treated as a tool for communicating, and the teacher and students function primarily as language users. He states that which sets of behaviors arise is crucially dependent on the participants' orientation to the classroom and to their motives for performing an activity. Now, have a look at the figure on this slide. We can see that there are numerous differences between traditional form-focused instruction and task-based instruction. In the first place, the traditional form-focused pedagogy has a rigid discourse structure consisting of IRF, or initiate, response, feedback, exchanges. In contrast, task-based pedagogy has a loose discourse structure consisting of adjacency pairs. Secondly, in a traditional class, the teacher controls topic development, while in a task-based class, students are able to control topic development. Thirdly, turn-taking is regulated by the teacher in the traditional classroom, whereas in the task-based classroom, turn-taking is regulated by the same rules that govern everyday conversation, which means that speakers can self-select. Fourthly, there are display questions in the traditional form-focused pedagogy. They are the questions that the questioner already knows the answer. On the contrary, the use of referential questions is preferred in the TBL class. Referential questions are those questions that the questioner does not know the answer to. Fifthly, in the traditional form-focused pedagogy, students are placed in a responding role and consequently perform a limited range of language functions. But in the task-based pedagogy, students function in both initiating and responding roles and just perform a wide range of language functions, such as asking and giving information, agreeing and disagreeing, or instructing. Sixthly, in a traditional class, there are little need or opportunity to negotiate meaning, while there are many opportunities to negotiate meaning when communication problems arise in a task-based class. Seventhly, traditional teachers provide scaffolding directed primarily at enabling students to produce correct sentences. On the other hand, TBI teachers provide scaffolding directed primarily at enabling students to say what they want to say. Eighthly, form-focused feedback is common in traditional classrooms. This means that the teacher responds implicitly or explicitly to the correctness of students' utterances. At the same time, content-focused feedback is more common in the task-based class. It means that the teacher responds to the message content of the students' utterances. And lastly, in the traditional form-focused pedagogy, echoing happens. Echoing means that the teacher repeats what a student has said for the benefit of the whole class. In contrast, in the task-based pedagogy, repetition happens. It is when a student elects to repeat something another student or the teacher has said as private speech or to establish intersubjectivity. In this module, we will also examine the differences in procedures between the traditional PPP strategy and task-based language teaching. Each lesson in the PPP strategy has 3 phases: presentation, practice, and production, that are based on the grammar focus of the lesson. Specifically, according to Hammer 2001, presentation is a stage where students are led to discover the meaning and use of the new language in context and provided a clear model of it. At this stage, most of the work is done by the teacher. In comparison, practice is a stage where the target language is isolated and practiced in a controlled way so that accuracy can be achieved. Practice is necessary because students need to memorize the form and say the target language smoothly. To make students practice, the teacher can use different sorts of exercises, such as drills followed by pair work exercises. Because it is important that the students are accurate at this stage, the teacher needs to spend a lot of time on correction. At this stage, both the teacher and the students do the work. Finally, production is a stage where students produce the new language they have learned on their own, without the teacher. In other words, at this stage, practice is no longer controlled by the teacher, and students say what they want to say, not what the teacher wants them to say. This stage is very important because learning takes place via doing, but not just by copying a model. To help students develop fluency, the teacher can make use of a number of communicative activities, such as role plays, discussion, and information gap activities. According to Research 2006, people who favor task-based instruction reject PPP model because it doesn't work and it doesn't reflect current understanding of second language acquisition. Task-based instruction reverses this procedure. It starts with a task that learners do. From their performance, the teacher identifies what language learners need. What language could be developed out of their task performance? Other than language, learners are required to produce a communicative outcome. Let's have a look at the 2 examples below and say which one follows a PPP model and which one follows a task-based instruction. Activity 1. Firstly, teacher asks students how they like to celebrate parties. Secondly, students listen to a conversation between two people organizing a party. Thirdly, students plan in groups an end-of-term party for the class. Fourthly, students report back to teacher to tell her what and where the party will be. And lastly, students analyze suggestions language. For example, I suggest and verb in. What about? Activity 2. Thirdly, students drill as a whole class phrases with suggestion language. And lastly, students write on their own a telephone conversation between two friends organizing an end-of-term party for the class. Have you got the answers? As you can see, the second activity follows a PPP model. It is clear that there are 3 stages. Presentation, when the teacher teaches suggestion language. Practice, when the student drills suggestion structures. And production, when the student writes a telephone conversation to organize the party. The first activity follows a task-based instruction cycle. The lesson starts with a communicative task and followed by language analysis. To understand the task cycle in more details, please watch Lecture 2 of this module. In this lecture, we have presented the differences between the traditional form-focused pedagogy and the task-based pedagogy. We have also explored the PPP model. We hope that the information we have provided is useful for you. For more information and practice, go back to read or go to discuss. Thank you very much for your attention.